All right, now we're going to start lesson 10.3. In this lesson, we're going to talk about if I have a really big amount of numbers, how do I organize that? So we've talked about stem and leaf, we've talked about box and whisker to organize big amounts of information. But if box and whisker is really good if I just want to see a big overview of the information, but I don't need to know which actual numbers I have. Remember, the box and whisker just gives me my lower extreme, my smallest number, my upper extreme, my biggest number, and then it gives me my three medians, my lower quartile, my middle quartile, and my upper quartile. So it gives me a good idea of the types of numbers I have, but it doesn't give me my specific numbers. My stem and leaf plot gives me all of my specific numbers, but that is really only useful if I don't have too many numbers, and especially if I don't have too many of the same number. If I have a bunch of numbers, and especially if I have a bunch of the same number repeated over and over again, a really good tool to use is called the frequency distribution table. So up here I have a whole bunch of scores on a specific test. And you notice in this list of scores, a lot of numbers are repeated several times. So for example, I have several 76s. You can see I have several 100s. So a lot of these numbers are repeated several times, and it's a very large amount of information. So I'm going to use a frequency distribution table. So how does this work? Well, you set up the table, and it's going to have four different columns. The first one is your data. All your data is you're going to list all of the numbers that you have, one each. So I have a 68, so I put a 68. I don't have any 69, I don't have any 70, I don't have any 71, so I'm not going to list any of those. The next number I have is a 72. Then I have a 76. I don't have any 77, 78, 79. Next number I have is an 80, and so on. So these are all of the scores that anyone got on the test. I'm only going to list each one once. So for example, even though 72, I have two 72s, I'm only going to put 72 once here. So the data is all the numbers I have. Next, I have the tally. So what a tally is you probably have used tallies before, I'm going to go through and I'm going to mark a tally each time I get that number. Now I've done it for most of the numbers, because that would take a really long time for me to do this on the video, but I'm going to show you for 88 up here. So I have one 88, so I'm going to do a tally. I have another 88, so another tally, 88, 88, and remember every 5, I'm going to cross it. So I have 5 88s, so I tallied each time I had an 88. Here I circle them, you could cross them out, however you want to do it. Next, so that's the tallies. You're going to tally, this tells you how many of each of these numbers I have. Then the frequency is just taking your tallies and writing them as a number. So I had one tally, so that means I have 168. For 72, I had two tallies, so I have two 72s. For me, 88, I had 5 tallies, so I'm just going to write here 5. That means I have 5 of that number. So that's your frequency. Finally, you have your product. Remember, the product is an answer to a multiplication problem. So how am I going to get my product? Well, for my product, I'm going to take my number, in this case I'm doing 88, and I'm going to multiply it by my frequency. So I'm going to do 88 times 5, and that is going to give me 440. So every single one of these, I've already done them. 86 times 1 is 86, 84 times 2 is 168. So once you get your tallies, and then you put that as a number of the frequencies, you're going to multiply each number by the frequency to get the last line, which is the product. So the first column is just all the numbers you have up here. Second, I'm going to tally how many of that number I have. Then I'm going to write that tally as a number. We call that the frequency. Then to get the product, I'm going to multiply each number by how many I have to get the total. Finally, at the very bottom, you're going to have a total. Now, I don't need a total for my data. I don't need a total for my tallies. I only need a total for my last two. So you're going to add up all of your frequencies and then put the total here. So for this lesson, you might have seen in the instructions, I will allow you to use a calculator for this lesson. Then you're going to add up all of your products and put the total there. So this total is all your frequencies, this total is all your products. That is how you make a frequency distribution table. Now, I can use this frequency distribution table to find my 4 measures of central tendency. So my first one is my range. So remember, the range is very simple. I'm just going to take my biggest number, 100, and subtract my smallest number, 68, and I get a range of 32. Now, for the mean, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Remember, the mean is all of my numbers added up divided by how many numbers I have. Now, obviously, you could add up all these numbers and divide by how many you have, but you've already done that with your table. All of the numbers added up is this number right here. So my product total is all of my numbers added up. How many numbers I have is my frequency, so this is how many numbers I have. So all you have to do is your product total, 2046, divided by your frequency total, 24, and that would give you 85.3. And remember, you can always round your mean to the tenths place. Round your mean to the tenths place, the first decimal. I'm going to do the mode next. The mode is very simple. It's the one that occurs the most. So in my table, it's going to be the one that has the highest frequency. So the one that has the highest frequency is 5, which is 88. 88 occurs 5 times, so my mode is 88. Remember, sometimes I might have more than one mode. If I had 2 numbers and they both occurred 5 times and that was the most, then I would put both of those numbers. So 88 is the one that has the highest frequency, so 88 is my mode. Now the median is a little tricky, so you have to listen very carefully. You might even want to watch this section a couple times because the median is the hardest part using this frequency distribution table. Now I could take all of these numbers, put them in order from least to greatest, find the middle number like I normally do, but that would take a really long time. So there's an easier way to do it, but you have to pay close attention to be able to figure out how to do this. So what I'm going to do for the median is I'm going to find my frequency total. My frequency total is 24. Now that's an even number. That means I'm going to have 2 numbers in the middle. Okay? If my frequency total is 25, then I would only have 1 number in the middle. But since my frequency total is 24, that means I'm going to have 12 and 12, when I split it in half, so there's going to be 2 numbers in the middle. Now, how do I figure out which number is in the middle? Well, it's going to be the 12th number. How do I figure out what the 12th number is? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my tallies. So I'm going to start with my first tally, and I'm just going to count to 12. So I have 1 tally here, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So what does this tell me? My 12th tally is in 86. Remember, I'm going to have 2 numbers though, so I have to look at both the 12th and the 13th. My 13th tally is 88. So my 2 middle numbers are 86 and 88, so I'm going to add those 2 together. 86 plus 88 divided by 2, so my median is going to be 87. Okay? So let me go over that one more time because I know this is a little confusing. I start off with my total tallies, 24, my total frequency. If it's even, remember I'm going to have 2 numbers in the middle. So when I divide by 2, I get 12, so it's going to be the 12th and the 13th number. I have to find out which is the 12th number and which is the 13th number. So I use my tallies to figure that out, and I just count my tallies until I get to the 12th number, which is 86, and the 13th number, which is 88. Let's say instead of 24 numbers, I had 25 numbers. Well, that makes it easier in a way because if I have 25 numbers, that means I only have 1 median. But when I divide 25 by 2, what do I get? I get 12.5. So what I'm going to do if there's an odd number is I'm going to round up to the next number. So 25 divided by 2 is 12.5, so it's the 13th number. Because that means there's 12 before and 12 after. So the 13th number would be my median. So in this case, I count till I get to 13. The 13th number is 88. Now sometimes you might have the same number. For example, if it was the 13th and the 14th, both of those are 88. The 13th and the 14th are 88. So my median would just be 88. I know that's a little complicated, so you might want to watch this video a couple times. If you have questions about that, feel free to contact me and let me know. In the next video, we're going to be going over histograms and what we call an interval frequency table.